Okay. Great. Thank you, everybody. I know we're all getting hungry and people need to leave. I just wanted to say, we both wanted to say a few brief closing remarks here, and I'm glad I actually made it to this session as opposed to the opening remarks session. We have, in fact, succeeded, I think, in fully putting the N back into Nax, and so I'm very happy. Make that possible. Waping Lou Adler and I are again so grateful to the Instituto for hosting and funding the event, to Efraín, Lazos, Gustavo Leva, Julia Munoz, Alejandro Naranjo Sandoval, the entire organizing team for putting together the program and for organizing this amazing event. Kant says in the Anthropology, and Robert was mentioning this, that, well, first, Kant says in the Anthropology that inclination to pleasurable living and inclination to virtue are in conflict with each other. And as we know, that Kant thinks the tensions can be resolved, at least temporarily, in what he calls the civilized bliss of a dinner party. So he says, the good living, which still seems to harmonize best with virtue, is a good meal in good company, and if possible, with alternating companions. This little dinner party must not only try to supply physical satisfaction, with which everyone can find for himself, but also social enjoyment, for which the dinner must appear only as a vehicle. And Alix Cohen has this great paper on Kant on dinner parties where she says, for Kant, they are really part of the highest ethico-physical good, the ultimate resolution of the conflict between our physical body and our moral powers, which consists in finding the right proportions for the mixtures between our partly sensuous and partly ethico-intellectual nature. And what I want to suggest here at the close of our biennial is that a well-curated conference can also sort of serve as an ethico-physically edifying event in the way that a great dinner party can. So the vehicle here wouldn't so much be the dinner, but a beautiful campus, a flawless technology team, successfully projecting the conference over YouTube as well as various Zoom channels, all the Instituto staff, as well as our own NACS technical consultant, Eli Benjamin Israel, who are working behind the scenes to help us with handouts and PowerPoints, Google Drive folders, microphones, like amazing self-orienting cameras. So we're grateful to all of the technical and sort of background work that people have been doing. The central work, however, in putting together a great conference, one that is fitting for the biennial celebration of an important philosopher, has to do with organization. And at this, I want to once again just commend and thank Efraín. These concurrent sessions gave us what Kant calls in that quotation, good company with alternating companions. And of course, physical satisfaction in the form of pastries and fruit and a very small coffee pot that was almost magically never empty. I don't know how that happened. And imminently some closing non-alcoholic cocktails, I guess.
Yeah, regrettably so.
As those of you who have put on conferences yourselves will know, a lot of the heavy lifting comes before the actual 3 days of the event. The various preliminaries, issuing the call, reserving the rooms, evaluating the papers, arranging the schedule. Those of you who have failed in one of these tasks will recognize the perils involved at each step. And so I'm just going to tell you briefly my own experience when I organized the 2012 biennial at Cornell. As a sort of object lesson here, I think some of you know this story. We did do a truly blind review of all the papers this year as well as that year. And upon the final reveal, we were a little bit mortified to see the list of names in the rejection pile. I mean, all of us have been rejected many times, but it still hurts a bit, you know, especially if you're a well-known figure in the field and you've devoted your life to working on Kant. So we're a bit nervous about rejecting some of the very good scholars in the rejection pile, but you know, we had to reject the verdict of our judges, and so we decided to proceed. And this was my great error. The only problem was that in sending out the rejection email, we CC'd instead of BCCing everybody on the list. And so there were some rather tense reply all messages and some hand-wringing apologies from us, the organizers. Like all good Kantian oppositions, however, there is or was a final resolution that was in some sense ideal. So Karin de Boer used the CC list to write to all the people whose papers had been rejected and invited them to a kind of competing conference at Leuven the very same weekend as our biennial at Cornell. That went so well, probably better than our conference, that she decided to keep it going every summer, and hence the birth of the annual Leuven conference, which continues to this day. Another way to look at what has happened here over the past 3 days is not through Kant's writings on dinner parties, but rather through the schematism. And for your sake, I had to mention the schematism. Here we had three, heterogeneous elements in some sense: Canadians, citizens of the US, Mexicans. We needed something that shared elements with each of us to bring ourselves together and systematically produce something. And I think we found that here, not only in our shared interest in Kant, but in the work of the team, including Efraín and others, bringing these heterogeneous elements together into a whole that produced, I think, some new genuine cognition and knowledge. So thank you again. I want to say one last thing in honor of the person who was meant to be the biennial honoree, outgoing board member Carl Amerix. Carl's wife, Geraldine, hails from Mexico City, and I think they were both excited to be visiting the city again, but due to some health issues that seem to be aggravated by taking flights, they decided not to come. But I just want to at least honor our stated desire to say something great about Carl and his incredibly influential and important work, especially recently, with the revival of the metaphysical reading of Kant, which could just as well be called the Emerixian reading. Even in his absence, we thank Carl for his benevolent presence as a leader in the field and as a mentor to many of us for decades. Finally, since Hua-Ping and I are on our way out as officers, I want to say something by way of the state of the society. In addition to this biennial, we have been holding events at all the APAs as usual, with a decent sized crowd at most of the events. We've also scheduled things at the American Society for 18th Century Studies, the American Academy of Religion meetings, and hopefully later this year at the MLA, the Modern Languages Association. Kant's influence goes beyond any particular discipline, and we've been glad to welcome people from other fields into the NACS community over the past 3 years. We've also continued to hold our regional meetings with help from regional directors Dai Haida at the Pacific Study Group, Kate Moran and Mavis Biss at the Eastern Study Group, and Margaret Baxley at the Midwest Study Group, Christy Sweet, and Olga, I think, is also now working, Olga Lenseski, and now Courtney Fugate in the Southern Study Group. So I'm grateful to each of these people, some of whom are here, for their work on behalf of the society. All of these efforts, and I think also that we made the membership free for students. Membership has grown in the last 3 years from around 350 to now, at last count, 596. Pretty good for one continent, just one guy, Kant. Those of you who are beyond the student stage and pay your annual dues help support this growth and allow us to keep putting on events and helping student members come to events like the Congress next year. Also grateful to Hua-Ping, who couldn't Zoom in, unfortunately, today. I was hoping she would, but she has done an amazing job, especially focusing on developing the Women's Network, which I think is fantastic. So really emphasizing the importance of transparency in the way we make decisions and select speakers and give prizes, working for inclusion and diversity. So I'm just incredibly grateful to Hua-Ping for her help. In my what's that? Oh yeah, and VNAX. We did VNAX. That was the other thing we did. During the pandemic, we went virtual, and I was amazed at the number of people who Zoomed in. It was great. Yeah. In my opening remarks, which Clinton delivered, I quoted Kant's adage that heaven has given us human beings 3 things to balance the odds of life: hope, sleep, and laughter. I think some of us discovered last night that he might also have added mezcal. But also the study of Kant and his legacy. I think after 299 years, on the brink of a series of tercentennial celebrations, our experience here indicates that it's still worth daring to know what Kant had to say, where he was wrong, where he was limited, where he was obnoxiously flawed and morally wrong, and where he can still orient our thinking and hope regarding this century, the next 100 years, whether or not that brings perpetual peace or the end of all things or something in between. Manfred Kuhn quotes one of Kant's dinner guests, Friedrich Lupin, saying, "What a triumph to be asked to table by the king in Königsberg. It was one of the characteristics of this great man that his deep thinking did not stand in the way of his cheerful socializing." So it just remains for me here to simply thank each of you for making the effort to come to Mexico City, to navigate your way to the conference every day, but also to engage in both deep thinking of the sort that Kant's works require of us and the cheerful socializing to which I think we will now give ourselves over entirely. So thanks to all of you.
That was a great close. So I don't think I can match it in any way. But I wanted to start by reminding Leibniz's monadology, where he says that perfection is the realization of the largest number of possibilities. Namely, I take to be the maximal diversity. And so I think this is in the same spirit. Diversity of origins, you all came from all over the world, Bangkok, Seoul, Santiago, Warsaw, Jerusalem, Rio, Tijuana, Jalapa. So this is incredible, and I join Andrew in thanking you for that effort. So this is diversity, right? At very level, at many levels. Diversity of institutions, we have public, private, confessional, non-confessional, large, very, very large, like this one, not so large, etc. Diversity of topics as well. We reviewed the classical places from the transcendental deduction, moral theory, aesthetic theory, political and philosophy of history and politics, schematism, and many others, transcendental ideas. But we also discussed other topics that challenge Kant, challenge us as Kantians, and problems that arise from our conflicted times that we live in. And conflicts that also challenge Kant's optimism and human reason, right? So we discussed also topics as intersectionality, the universal basic income, and others. And I think this side is very important to be, in touch with the discussions of the social reality, emerging from social reality. And last but not least, we had diversity of ideas. We don't need to be in agreement in everything. So the census is something to be desirable, but we have to cultivate the census. And I think in every session that we had in this conference, we cultivated dissent in a very good way. And I think this is the only way to do philosophy, to cultivate dissent. So I'd like to say then that you together sort of realized the Leibnizian idea, right? Realized the largest number of possibilities. So how did it happen? Right. So we know we are, well, at least myself, I'm a sort of materialist. I have a materialist persona. So there's a specific set of material conditions for that to be possible, and I'll get into that because I want to say their names and thank the persons from the tech team that have been supporting us all these days. But there is another aspect, and I'll finish with this, of the answer of how this perfection, as I should put it, was possible. And this is maybe a little bit metaphilosophical, because I think philosophy, well understood, is far more than a mere catalog of truths, argumental techniques, and narcissistic strategies to be always right. You know? It is rather a life flourishing activity. And I think, performatively speaking, we and we all have demonstrated this in this meta-philosophical thesis. So I thank you a lot. Again, I thank Andrew for the confidence. I have also Waping and all the suggestions and hints. And I also thank Ellie Benjamin for the support. It was essential. And I want you to join me in thanking, I'm going to mention the team, the team that have been supporting us these three days, especially today that we sort of keep Saturday. I don't know why we don't work on Saturdays in this university, but we are doing now. So this is good because we break the routine and
yeah, exactly.
yes, yeah. So I want to name first of all Yvette Sarmiento, which is she's the nominally Secretaria Técnica of the Instituto. I want to also mention Lucía Anaya, not only the head of the Departamento de Cómputo, but pretty much the leader of the team. Bryan de la Torre, who's here present, José Romero, and Alfonso Coronel, who was in charge of the YouTube transmission in the Luis Villoro room. And yeah, that makes it for me, and I thank you all.